Welcome to Watch Symposium. I'm Austin. All right, so let's talk about new versus old Rolexes. Now, there are two viewers. One is thinking about picking up an Explorer 2. Apparently has found one that is $5,000, unpolished, box papers. Man, that's a good deal. I'm not sure that the Explorer 2 is going to shoot up in the future like the GMT or the Sub. I think it will, especially because they've changed the design, and I don't think they've changed the design in a positive way, and I think that aesthetic will be appreciated in the future. But I will say, if this viewer had written and said that they had found a Sub, unpolished box and papers for $5,000, well, that's a different story. I mean, man, I would, I'm in no position to buy a watch right now, but faced with that option being a Sub, you'd have to jump on it. You could resell it immediately for a profit, but again, we're not talking a Sub here, we're talking an Explorer 2, but good deal, I think. And man, that's I'd go for that. Another viewer is thinking about picking up a GMT and has their eye on a ceramic GMT. Now, let's talk about new versus old and my feelings on that. When I was first getting into watches, and I hadn't picked up a Rolex yet, but I knew I wanted to, that was the question: do I go new or do I go pre-owned? And what it really came down for me was the aesthetic, and I wasn't really at the stage where I could see all the nuances and differences aesthetically of a no-date Sub like this and the one that was on offer. And I can't remember. I think at the time I was thinking about the Deep Sea, which I think was ceramic, or maybe it wasn't ceramic. No, I think it was not yet ceramic. It was still aluminum, but yeah, there was the date issue, and also the Sea Dweller was a little thicker, and I wasn't sure that I'd be crazy about that. But that's always been something I've thought about. What has made me want to go pre-owned, and it's not really saving a buck, although that's a huge factor. The reason I've got 3 Rolexes instead of 1 is because I went pre-owned, and I'd much rather have 3 Rolexes instead of 1. But I would have gone new if I liked the aesthetic more. Okay, so put it this way: I wouldn't settle, is what I'm saying, and that goes for pre-owned as well. When it really it came down to it, I looked at the pieces, be it the GMT, and I asked myself, do you like the new version or the old version? Which do you like more? And I just like the older aesthetic more, and that's what led me in that direction. In some ways, I almost, when I was sort of shopping and knowing I was jumping in, I almost wished I liked the newer versions more, because the used market is fraught with disaster and fraught with difficulties, and mistakes are easy to make, and you pay more going new, but you're not going to make the same kind of mistakes that you can as a new buyer. And I thought that might just be worth the cost, the safety of it. In retrospect, you'd be able to get that, unpolished piece for sure. But there is the cost. And I guess what really sealed it for me is the idea of paying more for something new that aesthetically I like less. And and I would have regretted that, and I would have looked down, and while I'm sure I would have learned to have loved whatever I got, whether it was ceramic GMT or a ceramic sub or the Sea Dweller, I would have learned to love it, but I'm sure that I would have seen the aluminum models on people's wrists and thought, man, there would have been this sort of element of regret of not quite getting what you wanted. I will say that there was something very satisfying about having a successful transaction on the used market. You feel like you've succeeded in some way. It's much more satisfying than just plunking down your cash at a AD. There's no real game in that, but there is in securing a good deal and securing a good watch and doing it unscathed. And I don't really have the gonads to do it anymore. I don't know. It's funny. I'm more timid now than I was at the time, and I think it's partially because I see things now that I didn't even notice before. I'm going to bring up polishing. I see a older piece that's suspiciously good looking, and red flags go off. Whereas I would have before walked into it just unaware, and it worked out 3 times. Especially worked out with the GMT Master 2, but you can be really bitten. You find out you get a redialed watch that's been repainted. That could happen, and it's an easy mistake to make when you're sort of new at the game and you see a really good piece and it's older, and you think it's really quality, and I guess that low price is because it's a little older. It's not, say, 40 millimeters or something, and on down the road you think about it and you think that was too good to be true. It was 40 years old and it had just the crispest dial. That was a redial, and I saw watches like that, and I didn't go that way because I wasn't looking for that type of watch, but I could have easily have had that happen. But if you like what's on offer new just as much, if not more, well, I mean, if you like it more, then you got to go new. You can't settle for going used to save a buck. You got to go new. Maybe in another video I'll talk about what I'm not crazy about in terms of the current Rolexes, aesthetic-wise. But I guess my final message of this video is to identify what you like aesthetically. Don't settle and go for it. I mean, and if it's used, hit the used market and be careful. But I would make the risk. And if what you like aesthetically is new, well, it's going to be more expensive, but it's easy. You get the cash together, you plunk it down, and you'll be all right. So it's really just a matter of finding out and thinking about and deciding which aesthetic you're partial to. Thanks for watching. See you next time.